it isn't cheap to build a new ecosystem, especially on the chain side, right? I think we have both, users that we want to onboard and also game builders, incredible Web2 game builders that we want to bring into the ecosystem. And we want to be a decentralized publisher.
Hey everyone, I'm Mike Zajko. Welcome to the Token Warrant. We've got a couple of special guests today, also the co-host here, Regan Bozman.
Yeah, great to be here. Franklin, Daryl, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, Franklin dialing in all the way from Singapore. We appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm part of the cleanup crew here now that Formula One is done.
Looks like you still haven't put the shades up in the hotel room.
Yeah, he's been in the same Pantera t-shirt since Friday night. Just
yeah, it's been a good time here, but I'll be glad to go home later this week.
Daryl, did you make it out, or are you heads down? It looks like
I did. I made it out. I got back late last evening, I think around like midnight. So fighting the jet lag a little bit, but this is a great way to beat it, hopping on a podcast with you guys.
Yeah. It looks like I'm the only one that skipped Singapore this year because Regan is also just arriving backstage.
I think with all the takes online, you probably get a good sense of what happened. I feel like this year was kind of crazy. Everyone has their own takes on what happened.
Yeah.
The Iggy Azalea party looked more exciting than most crypto parties I've seen. So I think I flew out like 2 hours before that. Maybe I missed the hectic part of the weekend.
Missed the alpha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nothing like getting humbled by getting turned down at a party at a crypto conference. Anyhow, from crypto conference to gaming and B3, really fun conversation. This is actually the first gaming related project we've had on the Token Warrant. So excited to talk about the broader category of gaming, then obviously drill down into what you guys are building. Maybe just to kick things off, Franklin, it'd be awesome to get an introduction. Pantera doesn't need much of an introduction given the OG status of the firm, but maybe just in case someone has somehow been living under a rock and hasn't heard of you guys, it'd be cool to hear about you and Pantera.
Yeah, we'd love to talk about both of those things. So, Pantera's been a blockchain and crypto focused investor since 2013. So we've been doing this for about 11 years. So even if people were familiar with us from all the way back then, we've gone through quite a few iterations and, we've expanded what we do. We launched the first institutional Bitcoin fund back in 2013. It was when Bitcoin was still at $65, and obviously that did well enough that we got to meet a lot of great people who were building in the space and became a venture investor. So today we have a portfolio of about 250 companies and projects across pretty much the entire ecosystem. So exchanges, payments, DeFi, consumer infrastructure, we pretty much do anything and everything that is building on blockchain rails. And we manage about 4 to 5 billion in assets, depending on the day. And so far, it's been great. I've been with Pantera about 5 years now, focused on our early stage investing and supporting our portfolio founders. I've spent time in TradFi. Was previously at JP Morgan, where I got to start the blockchain team there back in 2015 with a couple of other folks working on things like JPM Coin, Enterprise Ethereum, and that team's now known as Onyx, and they're continuing to do the good work of trying to convince Jamie Dimon that Bitcoin is not a scam. So, I hope to see a lot more coming from that team, but I left in 2018, decided I had enough of, trying to break through the sort of regulatory, legal, corporate kind of bureaucracy, and decided to do something entrepreneurial, and actually did that with Daryl. So that's how we first got connected and got to work together. Hit crypto winter in 2018, and we both kind of figured out our own paths in crypto, and I went to the West Coast and joined Pantera from there. But I've gotten a good chance to lead all of our gaming investments at Pantera, and my only kind of credibility there is I play a lot of video games, and I used to build games back when I was really young, text-based MMO RPGs called MUDs, and so that's really been my stamp of certification, I guess, when it comes to gaming.
You got to share, or maybe leaving that to Daryl. What was the project back in 2018?
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to touch on it. So, yeah, back in 2018, so I was a consultant before tagging along with Franklin for the ride. But yeah, back in 2018, I think a lot of folks were, at least like projects in the space, they were relatively new. And in terms of professionalizing and leveling up their organization, when it came to scale go-to-market and BD and just overall crypto strategy, and maybe how to talk with like Web2 folks that they were pitching, they didn't have too much experience. So Franklin, obviously coming from JP Morgan and having led the blockchain practice there, myself as a management consultant, we wanted to come together and basically put together an offering here to help these crypto projects on the consulting and go-to-market side. So really helping to professionalize and level up their operations. But as Franklin was saying, crypto market hit pretty bad in 18. I think it was, people talk about the bear market today being somewhat disappointing. That was the real bear, I feel like. And, people were just trying to save their own operations. And, in that scenario, not really looking to pay any consultants. So we had to go our separate ways. And I actually found my way to Coinbase, where I was for 4.5 years. And that was basically my tenure before starting NPC Labs and B3.
It was a funny era because I got into crypto or full time in 2018, joining up with Regan at CoinList. And the other factor was there really weren't many teams back then that had any sort of aspirations for being very professional in the crypto space. So like I think the only consultants that were getting by were like the token advisors.
Yeah, like the ICO consultants.
ICO advisors.
Yeah, there were a lot of those. There were a lot of those that we would run into. Yeah, I mean, I think in today's market, I'd probably call what we were doing something more like a venture studio, where I think we were working with early stage teams and just kind of embedding ourselves there. And we got to work with some great folks in DeFi, and even on the centralized exchange side, early ETF launchers that were still getting out of the gate. So it was a good experience to just kind of get out of the bubbles that we were in and really figure out what was actually being built. Earned some battle scars along the way, but I think it was a really good experience to just take us through as builders.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember those days quite well. So Daryl, Franklin pieces out, moves to the West Coast, or he heads to the West Coast, holding down the fort with Regan in San Francisco right now. Are you still in New York, or where are you based right now?
Yeah, right now I'm still in New York, but basically when we parted ways, I actually did a stint in San Francisco as well. So that was back pre-DPO, pre-COVID, and Coinbase still had everyone work in the office. So that was in San Francisco, downtown. I was there for like 3 or 4 months, and then COVID hit, and Brian Armstrong came out with the mandate to go remote first. So all of us spread all over. But yeah, long story short, I was at Coinbase for 4.5 years, and I led a lot of the launches for our most crypto native products. And the last one actually was helping build the ecosystem on the base side. And that was what kind of led me into NPC and B3. Because while at Base, we actually came across an incredible number of gaming projects that really wanted to work with us, plug themselves into the EVM and Base ecosystems. But unfortunately, there were 2 big barriers that prevented them from doing so. One was on the tech side. Base, at the end of the day, was just too expensive for a lot of these gaming studios that were actually looking to push the boundaries of how much activity they could launch and propagate on chain. So they were thinking like tens, if not hundreds of millions. And if you run the numbers, the studio would be bankrupting themselves in just compute costs if they were to do that. So that was one. And then the second, these gaming studios and game developers, I think really their mental model when it comes to a platform partner is really what they see in Web2, right? These large gaming studios and publishers that really help on the financial side and marketing side and take this concept of a game and take it to scale, right? Help them onboard tens, if not hundreds of millions of users, and then help them on the financial support side. And I think what Base had was great. I mean, it's a blockchain, close proximity to Coinbase, but at the end of the day, it was a general purpose blockchain. And there's all these different use cases competing for attention. But what game developers really wanted was a chain and a platform that was going to be very, very hands-on with UA, with marketing, with community building, financial support. And so Base couldn't provide that at the time. So my co-founders and I, there's 3 of us, we put our heads together and really thought, hey, look, what can we do to help solve both of these problems? And we thought, hey, if we built a layer 3 on top of Base, layer 3 helping to minimize some of the gas fees associated with launching on chain, and then just launch it as a new chain and ecosystem, that could be an interesting value prop for some of these studios. So that's basically what B3 is. We're a layer 3 ecosystem on top of Base. And yeah, fast forward to today, have amazing partners like Franklin on the investor side, and yeah, can speak more about the chain itself, but we're moving along pretty nicely.
Would love to get into more of the details around kind of everything you're doing on the gaming side. But maybe taking a step back, it sounds like you're pretty involved in the launch of Base and its go-to-market. I feel like it's been wildly more successful than most people thought about. Mike and I were talking a few weeks ago, and it almost feels like it's Base versus Solana. Base is kind of just carrying the EVM. I mean, it's obviously not literally true, but it really does feel like the mind share is pretty high. What do you think went so right at on the Base launch? And maybe also just curious kind of what you think some of the challenges have been and risks going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots to talk about there, but I'll try not to fill up this entire podcast with my thoughts. I think what many people don't know is in the early days of Base, it was actually very unclear what the Base launch was going to look like. We didn't really have it in all of our heads that, hey, look, when we launched this, just because we're Coinbase and the Coinbase brand, that this was going to be a smashing success from day one. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is we launched mainnet February 2023, or testnet February 2023, rather, and mainnet in August of 2023. Sentiment at the time was not very good, to say the least. And so we were almost launching into kind of a bear market. So there was a lot of uncertainty from the very beginning. But I have to give a lot of credit to Jesse and his vision for what Base would eventually become, and his North Star of anchoring basically all of us on the team, the founding team, to, hey, this is going to be one of the best platforms for builders, right? So we have to provide the best developer experience. And really the value prop here is connecting those builders and all the interesting applications to Coinbase and the Coinbase user base. So I think it was laser focused from day 0 on all these different things, these different ideas, experiments to try to combine the two. And I think along the way, there are a few, I think, seminal moments that really made Base what it is today. So I think we were, for the first month, really, really worried about what activity was actually going to come onto Base and what new applications. Friend Tech was the first that I think really took off. And I remember speaking to Racer at the time, and he was really debating between Arbitrum and Base. I'm not sure if many people know this, but basically it came down to Arbitrum and Base, and we were able to convince him that Base, by virtue of being close to Coinbase and the support and him being on the ground floor of a new network, right, and a new chain being launched, that there's a lot of potential for him to just be a core contributor, and he was excited about that. So that launched. The virality of that, I think, really, really helped to spark a lot of new interests on Base and showed folks that Base could be this playground for new applications. That was one. The second, I think, was On-Chain Summer version 1, the inaugural one. I think that was just a bit of relief that the market needed to like rally around something, because everyone was like, there's nothing to do. It's kind of bearish. I think that success was really helpful too. And then Farcaster Frames, I felt like that was another moment where, the team at Coinbase and Base really moved mountains to like support frames. And you even had like Coinbase employees building their own frames on Farcaster, on Base. And so the energy there around that was just really, really intoxicating. And I think those things and all the things that Base has done recently has really helped propel it to what it is today.
It's awesome to see. I mean, I feel like Coinbase has kind of had moments in time where like it's maybe been a little bit of controversial within the industry, but like the energy and the crypto, like, I don't know, the crypto native vibe emanating out of Coinbase and the resources it's put behind Base and everything around it are really, really cool. And I like genuinely think has done a lot to propel the industry forward.
No, I'd love to just touch on that really quickly, because I think the change in mindset for Coinbase was so important here too. That's why I'm so bullish on Coinbase these days is, having been there 4.5 years ago, I think the idea was always like tweaking and optimizing and improving on our cash cow, which is our retail brokerage business, right? Obviously the institutional and custody business too, but it was more about building and growing existing products, which was more or less Web 2, right? Those products aren't really crypto native or on-chain. But I think since the success of Base, literally every single team at Coinbase is now thinking, how can I build on-chain? How can I build to support the growth of Base? And it's not just Base, it's other ecosystems and protocols too. But how can I, make my product more on-chain and increase the on-chain GDP? Which I feel like is a huge shift in mindset. Who knows if it's going to work? Coinbase may just shoot itself in the foot, and Robinhood may take, Coinbase's lunch or something. But I'm personally very bullish, just as a crypto degen.
Yeah, I am too. Maybe like digging into B3, like specifically, I think we just like help contextualize the product to listeners. Like, let's say I'm like a gaming studio. I'm kind of considering, building like an on-chain game. Like, what exactly does the B3 product suite look like for game developers?
Yeah, absolutely. So just taking a quick step back, we're like relatively new to the block, if you will. We're just, maybe a 4-month-old company and just a month live on mainnet. But basically, NPC Labs, we're a core contributor to B3. And that's a new ecosystem, gaming ecosystem on Base. Our mission is super, super simple. Want to bring fun on chain. And to that end, we have 2 core products. The first is, if you're a builder, you can deploy on B3, which is our layer 3 framework and chain, completely built for gaming, and it's live on mainnet today. But if you're a user, there's actually another product that we built called basement.fun, and it's this web discovery app, essentially. And that really stemmed from one of the key problems that we saw early on in the Base ecosystem, which was, where do you go to actually find and like discover and just like play these games? Is there like a central front page or homepage, if you will? And that wasn't available, right? So we wanted to build that. And the first chain we essentially launched it on was B3, but there's, nothing preventing us from like launching and supporting other chains in the future as well. But yeah, in short, there's 2 products. As a builder, you can deploy directly on B3 for low gas fees, high throughput, right? And then if you're just a user and you want to check out on-chain games, you can go to basement.fun.
Maybe, Franklin, getting back to you, gaming as a category has been, something really like as long as I've been in crypto, we've been talking about, and it's gone through these ebbs and flows. Obviously, it was super hot with the whole play to earn craze. Maybe not so much now, but like you've been there since the very beginning or been investing in it for a while. So maybe like for listeners, like setting the context of like what's going on in gaming and like how do you think about it as an investor, like the landscape of opportunities that are out there?
Yeah, we've seen crypto gaming really have its ups and downs. And, at the highest peaks, it really was one of the most exciting sectors in the ecosystem. But for us, it's always been a long-term thesis. And it really breaks down into a few things. One is what's happening in the traditional gaming industry. There's not a lot of understanding among crypto natives of what it's like to be a gaming entrepreneur, a small or mid-sized gaming studio, competing against the largest incumbents, folks with the ability to deploy, $10 million a day in player acquisition and marketing. There's been a huge change in the economics of Web2 gaming that have really hurt anyone's ability to launch something new. And it's come from both the incumbents really having so much scale, so much budget to deploy. Kind of feels like the empire sort of at its peak, right? And we're kind of harvesting all the profits from that, from the largest players. But the other piece too is that the ability to acquire players is so much harder now. It's the financial component of actually having to compete against those large budgets, but it's also the way that Apple and Android, as two examples of centralized platforms or gatekeepers in the system, have changed your ability to target players. Advertising and data privacy has been this really controversial kind of lightning rod for how data should be handled. But one of the side effects of that whole debate is that now it's really hard to effectively target the right kinds of players that you want to play your game. And what that means is you have to spend a lot more money to go and find them. So at this point, it's essentially unprofitable to be an up-and-coming game and to try to make it to the point where you have scale and critical mass of players. So what does that mean? It means that there's this huge pool of creative talent that has always existed in the gaming industry every single year. That energy and that engine is going, but it has nowhere to actually build and monetize in a way that can actually let them make a living. So when you see this kind of thing as a venture investor, for me, what it says is, okay, we are at an inflection point in gaming cycles, right? When the evil empire starts to really hit its pace and just everything feels easy to them, that's when the rebels start to plot their downfall, right? And so following that kind of pattern, where are the rebels? Where's the new business model that's going to unlock a new rational and viable model for games in the future? I think that's in Web3. And that's our thesis really, is that all that talent is looking for a new way to reach their players, to develop new ways of building value within a game and capturing that value through ways that just aren't as antagonistic to players. So when you think about one of the key business model changes with crypto gaming, it's this concept of going from being a merchant or an e-commerce platform that's just selling goods in one direction, right? It's, hey, let me go pick some assets off of the shelf, try to sell it to you in microtransactions, or it's an advertising platform, right? Let me try to keep you within my game as long as possible so that I can deliver more ads to you. Both of those things are not great for the player experience in the long term, right? You're really just, I think, extracting as much customer lifetime value as you can over time, or you're trying to push as much ad space into that small experience as you can. So going from that to a marketplace model is a lot more interesting, right? To be able to benefit as a game from peer-to-peer activity is a lot more viable long-term, because at that point, what you really need to optimize for is build as rich and vibrant and engaging of an experience as possible, where players want to interact with each other, want to buy and sell from each other, and that lifetime value of the player can actually go on for much, much longer, right? I mean, we already see this even within some of the earliest attempts at crypto gaming, where the retention metrics are just completely insane and off the charts compared to regular games. And so that change in economics, I think, is what ultimately speaks to that creative talent and says, look, if you're going to build something, this is the place to do it. And so, I think when it comes to crypto gaming, we're just at the very start of that. That new business model and that new way of monetizing that hopefully will give them the chance to, number one, build a better relationship with their players, and number two, really outcompete the incumbents of today.
I'm curious, like that, it makes sense as kind of a backdrop for crypto gaming. Like, has that backdrop been pretty consistent since kind of investment in the space really kicked off, which was probably like 2020, 2021? Or do you think that's changed over the last 3 years and maybe now it's like different forces pushing people into crypto gaming, different teams?
I would say that thesis has been really consistent from the very beginning, but there is a matter of sequencing, right? What are the things that needed to happen first for gaming builders to really see the validation of the business model, to also see some of the wrong ways to use crypto within their game, and then to basically retool, regroup, and then figure out the next wave of gaming ventures. So, I think the things that needed to happen, one was seeing what's been happening, seeing what happened with Axie Infinity as one of the sort of breakthrough moments for gaming. And there was kind of a double-edged sword there, right? It was incredibly successful in terms of capturing a level of distribution and player engagement that you really just hadn't seen in any kind of game before, right? This idea of play to earn was kind of the wrong diagnosis of what was happening there. It was actually what I think of as economic immersion. The fact that when you really add value into a game that feels as real or even more real than the value within traditional games, you get this level of engagement and excitement and community that's such on a completely different level, right? And so one of the pitches that I make to Web2 gaming teams that are thinking about whether to build in Web3 is this idea of the economic experience and economic immersion is something that no game in the past has ever been able to really tap into, right? I mean, you've seen some examples like gold in World of Warcraft, or things like Second Life or EVE Online, where people really treat it as a true economic activity, but that kind of element has never become sort of a first-class citizen within games. And so that kind of validation has been great. I think the other piece that we kind of got wrong as investors, just broadly, is that building a game is kind of a miracle in itself, right? Every game that actually goes live is kind of its own mini masterpiece that took a lot of craft, a lot of art, design, lore to come together, basically every skill set you can possibly think of on the creative side and the engineering side. So it's really a lot more complex than launching a smart contract. So to expect that the gaming sector within crypto would travel at the same speed as other sectors like DeFi or stablecoins was always kind of unrealistic and sort of ignorant of the realities of launching a game. So, I think we've gone through a cycle now of, more mind share and more attention coming into the gaming sector. Now we're going to see the next wave launch over the next 12 to 18 months, and we'll see the same thing again. Lessons to be learned, things that work and don't work. But all in all, the talent story is still going exactly as I think we expected, which is that it's literally getting better week over week.
Daryl, one of the things that's cool about B3 is was it called basement.fund?
Yeah, basement.fund, because, back in the day, you played games in your mom's or your parents' basement. We like
so
to
this is from what I understand, it's a front page for game discovery, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, because prior to getting into crypto full time, I was at Facebook on the mobile gaming team. And that started out as this like, okay, there was a bunch of games on the App Store, hard for discovery, like kind of the same similar thing with like game developers, like how do I reach people? And Facebook came out with these mobile app install ads, and they just literally was like one person selling these things. Funny enough, who's now in crypto, but like they poured so much money into these ads because they were working. But it allowed for discovery. Like people that never played games, they were now like, well, I'm on Facebook, I'm bored, and here's this game. Why do I play this? So expanded the audience quite a bit. When you think about for you guys, and maybe just like broadly for crypto gaming, like what do you think could potentially be that mechanism for finding new audiences? Or do you think it's more like, hey, let's just like work within the people that are in crypto today?
Yeah, great question. I think going back to what Franklin said earlier too, it's a little bit about sequencing as well. I think there are platforms right now, like a Telegram, for example, that are more open, right, to embedding native crypto experiences. And you can then have these casual, hyper casual games be distributed in a very similar way to how they were back in their day, right? With like Zynga and Facebook and even Zynga and MySpace. I think not many people know, but those games like Mafia Wars were first on MySpace and then they went over to Facebook. And so I think like in terms of near term opportunity, there could be these platforms that are very, very skilled and very, I think, open to experimenting with crypto, be distribution platforms for these types of games. But I think for us as well, what we want to do is not just wait for these gatekeepers to open up. Like we want to build our own distribution. And we think that, basement.fun, which is web-based now and a little bit alpha, we're coming out with a mobile version pretty soon. That could be a new type of experience, a new type of on-chain experience. So if you log in right now as a guest and you don't have an existing account, you can actually just click collect and play, and the game will pop up. This Flash-based game will pop up, and you're just going to instantly start playing. What we did for you actually in the background is mint the NFT for you, and that gets deposited in a wallet that's been created for you. And you as a user don't have to go and claim it or even do anything with the wallet until you're actually ready. So if you want to go create a profile, the wallet's waiting for you. If you hit a certain game score or hit a certain in-game achievement, there'll be another carrot there waiting for you to like claim the wallet. But really the intent of what we're trying to do here is just make that barrier to entry, that initial onboarding experience, completely seamless and invisible to the user until they're ready. And we think like that's an interesting angle to try to onboard, not just the, maybe like 100,000 people that are in crypto today, right? But actually reach the new audience. We always have this funny saying internally, like we really want to onboard the mom in Nebraska, right, that plays Candy Crush. We feel like that's really our target audience. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, Mike, it's actually great that you mentioned Facebook because I see the analogy there so clearly that this is the Farmville moment for crypto. There was a point in time in the 2010s when Facebook was really just a Farmville launcher for the world. And the main core activity that people were coming to Facebook for was to plant crops and see what their friends were doing on their farms. And eventually that grew obviously into a much broader social graph and social network with commerce activity, businesses built around it, and a huge marketing ecosystem. But it's such a common pattern that you see among sort of emerging networks that games and entertainment are really the onboarding mechanism for the critical mass before other things like financial use cases or commerce use cases can really start to take off and scale. And so, that's exactly kind of the thing that we saw in B3's potential is, capitalizing on the mindshare that Base has and sort of the trusted seat that it has within the consumer kind of zeitgeist, but really translating that into real activity through entertainment and through gaming and through fun. And so, I think from there, it's such a powerful seat to potentially be in, because you can grow from there into so many other parts of the end user's daily activity and wallet activity.
I think like narrowing in on the round, I mean, Daryl, we're having this conversation. You guys announced, I think it was an $18 million seed round last month. Does that sound about right? Would love to just like tell us about the round, tell us about, why now, like you guys felt like the right time to raise was, and yeah, maybe just think about how kind of like you guys see like use of funds next 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So that number is correct. So 18 million in the seed round, and we actually did a quick pre-seed as well. So there's 3 million that we did in the pre-seed. So 21 million across 2 rounds. And I think, first off, just want to say we're honored to be a part of the Pantera family and also the family of all the other investors on the list. I think when it comes to the timing of the round, it isn't cheap to build a new ecosystem, especially on the chain side, right? I think we have both, users that we want to onboard and also game builders, incredible Web2 game builders that we want to bring into the ecosystem. And we want to be a decentralized publisher, right? And so what that really means is helping these folks with, the cost of game development in some select scenarios, but also helping them with scaled marketing and scaled UA. And that can get really, really expensive. So I think when it comes to capital, a lot of that is going to be going towards helping these game developers grow on B3. So I think, that's part of the reason for the size of the raise. And then secondly, I think is to build out an all-star team here to really help bring gaming on chain. And so right now we have, 12 folks. We're keeping things pretty lean in the initial months. Mainnet has been live for, about a month or so. But I think as we go through the next few phases and months of mainnet, we're going to continue to scale the team and really have a global presence, because Base has a lot of mind share in, but I think still hasn't done a lot of penetration in, to be quite frank, is Asia. And Asia has always been like a huge, huge home for gaming. It's over 50% of gaming by any metric that you use, right? Especially on the developer side. Super talented game developers in China and Korea and Japan. And so we want to start to build a presence there on the ground. And that's going to require capital as well. So I think that's, some context and color for the size of the raise. I also want to go through and just quickly shout out maybe some of the investors, other investors too, like, makers who are incredible on the Web2 gaming side, and also, very, very smart when it comes to Web3 and crypto gaming. And yeah, we have the support of like Hashed and Collab and Currency and Sfermion, Marana, Bitscale, Base Ecosystem Fund. So yeah, just, grateful to be backed by this all-star lineup of partners.
Franklin, on your side, like maybe would love to hear, I mean, usually we ask investors like how they met, the founder. It sounds like you and Daryl like known each other for a long time, but maybe kind of like how the conversation around NPC Labs started, how you all did diligence here, what made you want to invest?
Yeah, definitely. So when Daryl was I think really starting to kind of think about NPC Labs and B3, I was at the same time, really diving into crypto gaming. And, it was kind of a perfect moment of us arriving at the same place once again of, what we saw as the most exciting part of the ecosystem. We had done investments in around a dozen gaming studios, a couple of gaming guilds when those were really taking off, a few plays in infrastructure and analytics like Helica that have been building on-chain data tools and player acquisition tools for games. And so it felt like we had a pretty deep understanding of what gaming founders needed. It's always good to sort of know the customer really well before you even know the project and the product. And so, there were a couple of things that I felt really high conviction about. One was that every game that had any kind of success would eventually launch its own app chain. When a game has, 10 million, 100 million players, it's going to want to control its own destiny and have control around its own tech stack on chain. And so that seemed really inevitable to me, that this would be a huge developer concern about how to launch an app chain and how to find the right kind of block space to build that on. And so, one thesis that we've always had is that transactions and projects or applications on chain will eventually find their best home. The place where they're most able to thrive and most able to satisfy all of their requirements. And so that requires quite a bit of customization and dedicated block space to really make that happen. So, when I heard about how Daryl was thinking about it, all the great work that he had done in the base ecosystem to onboard, some of the top gaming teams that I've seen, it just seemed like the perfect sort of founder market fit, where he intimately understood the customer, had been working with them for years, literally on this question of what they would need to be successful. And from all of that, I think reached this insight of, okay, this is what we can build for them. And to me, it's really establishing that home for gaming applications, right? What kind of things do on-chain gaming transactions need that are different from a DeFi transaction, right? Or different from pure settlement. And so, building for that in mind, I think is really powerful, because, the other thing that was important to us was this idea that of all the things in crypto consumer, gaming is really the frontier. Why is that? Why am I so high conviction on that? I think it's everything that we had talked about when it comes to emerging networks really building off of entertainment, but it's also that the revenue flywheel is just so obvious in gaming, right? That is not something that needs to be de-risked. People want to spend money to have fun. And so if you're going to build for a particular kind of developer or customer, it's best to build for one that knows what their end goal is, right? And how they're going to be sustainable for the long term, rather than to build for use cases that still need to figure that out, right? And still need to kind of de-risk that part of it. So, if you're going to figure out the frontier of consumer crypto, you want to be working with developers and partners who have the most real, tangible problems to go and solve. Because if you can solve those for them, you've solved it for all of consumer, right? Gaming is pretty much the most rigorous version of consumer you can think of, because everything else is gamified, right? Financial products for retail are gamified. Social networks are quite gamified. But a true pure game that is trying to create this real-time, engaging experience that retains users for a long time, if you can solve what they need on chain, the rest of consumer is going to be easy, hopefully, and will appreciate, I think, all the tooling and the approach that B3 is taking. So, I think that kind of sums it up when it comes to sort of the optimistic side of the thesis and everything that we really cared about going into it. I think the less optimistic, or sort of the why now, why this, why hasn't it worked before kind of question, was also a really important one for us to think about, which is, there have been previous attempts, right, to build infrastructure and block space for games. Why hasn't that worked? And I think it's two things. One is that when you try to establish neutral infrastructure while still building a game yourself, that's really hard, because you're always going to treat your own game as a first-class citizen, and it probably has too narrow of a set of requirements than you would if you were just building from day one to be infrastructure. And second, I think, is that you really needed a new kind of approach to the architecture of that block space, right? The idea that every game is going to be its own app chain is one that you should build for from day one. Because if you don't, you're going to end up in a place where you're cannibalistic or competitive against what that successful game is going to ultimately be in its end state. And so, you see that now today where there's a lot of migration, a lot of movement around the chains that games choose to build on. The partners that they picked from day one may not be the ones that they find to be the most supportive of that end state and most supportive of being an app chain because there's competing interests, right? There's another token to be aware of. There's other games that are prioritized over you potentially. And so, I think starting with those principles with B3, it just felt like, okay, this is the way things are going. Is this the right team to go and do it? And so that was the final piece of the puzzle. Obviously, having worked with Daryl, I know how hard he works. I know he's the kind of founder who's going to find a way, right? And that's the kind of founder you want to bet on, no matter what it is. But also, the combination of him, Victoria, and Sean coming together is just, to me, one of the best combinations that I've seen. Folks that have actually been working with their ideal customers have made that kind of breakthrough moment that we had talked about at the beginning of the podcast, where it was not easy to get these folks on board for the base ecosystem in the early days, and to figure that out and to understand their needs was really something that no one had done properly before. And at the same time, having this kind of compelling vision for the technical architecture was something that I just saw once I got to hear the full vision from them.
So we're coming up on time here, but maybe Daryl, real quick from you, what should people, you just launched on mainnet, what should people expect from you? And then we'll finish off with a fun question for both of you. So Daryl, answer that, and then I'll get to the next one.
Yeah. Let me keep it short and sweet. So we are live on mainnet, and it's been a month. But I think in general, the company, we take a pretty unorthodox approach to things. We like to say internally, you can't really do the same thing and expect different results. So a lot of what we do is about speed and velocity. So we launched mainnet, and it's been live for less than a month. We launched an app on top of mainnet as well. And it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be issues here and there, but the general idea here is to build in the open, right, and build with the community. And I really like the projects back in the day, the past vintage, like 2016, 17. They launched and they were able to grow with the community, right? So we really want to bring some of that energy back, and we'll just launch new features every single day, every week. So that's a lot of where we are. So continue to expect kind of new features, new games, and new users as well. Just to touch on that a little bit, like one of the games that we launched, it's this idle clicker game. It's pretty simple. It's called Coconut Clicker, and the game itself was a play on the Kamala Harris meme when she says, "Hey, did you fall out of a coconut tree?" We launched that thing, and all of a sudden we got 50,000 people playing it concurrently. I think a lot of it was bots, obviously, just like a lot of things right now. But even if you remove that, it's still quite a significant amount of activity. And so here we're just all about trying new things. And I think the industry is hungry for new, different, accessible type of experiences. So expect, more games, more content out, and more users to come on B3. And Mike, maybe you can put in a good word with your ex-Facebook colleagues and chill them on B3.
I'll try. Most of them, honestly, funny enough, there's at least 5 people from that team have all left and joined crypto. So that's the ultimate.
Yeah, I feel like I've met all of them. There's definitely a Facebook gaming mafia.
Yeah, there's a real mafia in the crypto industry. So this one, I'm going to put you guys on the spot here a little bit. If you're going to recommend a game to someone to go out and play, when you mentioned this coconut game, maybe that's the game. But what should me and Regan go home and play? What games should listeners go out? Because I think people are also questioning what game do I play? I heard about Axie a long time ago, but what now?
Yeah, my number one recommendation right now is to go and download King of Destiny. It is available on iOS and Android. There's been 1 million installs already. I think they've built something that's really fun. It's based off of already existing games like Coin Master and Monopoly Go that are incredibly popular right now, but they've added a bunch of twists to it. And one of the magical parts of the game is that when you get to level 10, I believe, you are converted to an on-chain player without you ever knowing. And it's incredibly smooth. You're suddenly able to buy and sell assets on-chain, and you can see those transactions on OpenSea if you were to check yourself. I think just to put, your mom, your grandma, your aunt, your dad in that position where, they're on the subway or bus, they're playing a game, and suddenly they're literally using Arbitrum or Ethereum without ever knowing about it. And all the things that come out of it, like, being able to feel empowered within a game to be your own merchant and buy and sell the things that you spend time achieving and acquiring is a great feeling. So, no pressure. This is not the kind of game that's going to take up the next 2 hours of your life. Like, literally the next time you're stuck in an Uber trying to kill some time, that's the time to play it.
Mike, I just downloaded it. Whoever has the least points next week has to buy dinner at PubKey. Two Bitcoin burgers, and that can be the wager.
Especially cool because this is one of the Facebook alum, Owen O'Donoghue, who's a friend of mine.
Yeah, shout out Owen,
the CEO. So very cool to have that be the game. And Daryl, you're up next.
Ooh, I have maybe I'll flag a game that's a bit more heavy. So Parallel. If you are a fan of TCGs, maybe like Hearthstone or something in that department or realm, Parallel is an amazing game. It's like sci-fi-esque, really awesome artwork. The gameplay is really, really cool and innovative too. So if you guys like that type of game or the audience likes that type of game, I would really go check it out.
I have some of the Token. I feel like there's so much shit around, like all the different things. I could not tell you what exactly it does, but maybe this is a good nudge to go try it.
Yeah. Maybe one thing on that too. We made a big announcement at Token 2049 last week that, Parallel, you could think of them almost as like a gaming studio where they're building multiple titles. They have a new third-person shooter that's coming out, and that's going to be on B3. And I think as a Prime holder, you're basically entitled to ownership, right, and stake in all of the games that they build. So, maybe early alpha.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, my Prime, going to work for me.
Yeah.
Guys, this was an awesome conversation. Really appreciate you both taking the time.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
It was really fun.
Thank you, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.